My daughter Taylor had just finished her entrance exams for the private elementary school, and all that was left was to wait for the results. Nervously, we checked the admissions website.
Hurry up! Hurry up!
Listening to Taylor's urging, I faced the computer screen. As I scrolled, I found Taylor's application number and name. She passed.
Passed? Yes, yes, yes.
We both jumped around in joy. I quickly messaged my husband, William, about the results via our messaging app. I'm sure he'll be thrilled. Maybe he'll leave work and come home to celebrate. I harbored a faint hope. However, he didn't say congratulations, nor did he say good job.
Just got held up at work. Then I'm off on a business trip.
That was the only message. I understand he's busy since he even works on holidays, but he could at least show some happiness with us at a time like this. Why settle for just business-like communication? Can't he even imagine how hard Taylor worked, stewing over these thoughts? 3 days later, William returned home in high spirits. He handed me a souvenir he was carrying, and while stroking Taylor's head, said,
"Congratulations on passing. You did it."
Looks like you did mess up too, Dad.
Without missing a beat, Taylor pulled out several photos and scattered them in front of him. Seeing them, William turned pale and began to tremble. "My name is Karen. I'm a 40-year-old stay-at-home mom. I got married about 7 years ago, and now I live with my husband William and our daughter Taylor. When I first met William, he was a company employee, a diligent workaholic. I was drawn to his childlike innocent smile. Now William has taken over his father James's company and struggles daily as its president. He leaves home early in the morning and usually doesn't return until after midnight. Being a president is really busy, huh?" I muttered alone in the dark living room, waiting for William to come home. I used to think his job was just sitting at a desk stamping documents, but it seems that's not the case, because he's so passionate about his work. He leaves all the household chores and child-rearing to me.
"I'm busy with the company, so I'll leave the house and Taylor to you."
No matter what I consult him about, he ends up cutting off the conversation with those words. Of course, he does nothing even on his days off. He spends all day lounging on the sofa, playing with his smartphone, or he might be spreading out magazines and comics, taking naps throughout the day. You should play with Taylor a bit. When I said that in exasperation, William started to get angry.
"I'm always tense and working hard. Let me do what I want on my days off at least."
It's hard to believe he's a father. He doesn't do household chores or take care of Taylor. I was dismayed by his attitude, which seemed to suggest that he was allowed with just doing the job. Taylor had just started preschool, and her uniqueness stood out right away. Even when the teachers spoke to her, she seemed aloof, and it was unclear whether she was listening or not. She dislikes playing in the mud, and even had a friend who invited her to join. Even when group activities start, she doesn't join in and often plays alone. She might sit quietly reading a picture book, but then she'll look at the same book all day and won't share it with her friends. Every time I picked her up from preschool, I was shocked by each thing the teachers told me.
She might not be adjusting to the environment.
Maybe she doesn't know how to interact with friends since she just started. Taylor is an only child, but she can communicate normally at home, and she doesn't seem to have trouble with communication. I think she plays just fine at the local park. What's wrong with Taylor? Since Taylor started preschool, I began to worry if she might be different from other kids. I've talked to other moms, but they don't think she's that different. I even tried discussing it with William.
"Is Taylor not fitting in at preschool
Yeah, she mostly plays alone and doesn't seem to play with other kids much. William responded with a disinterested grunt. The teacher suggested we might want to get her checked for a developmental disorder. As soon as I mentioned developmental disorders, he made a skeptical face.
What? Isn't that just about being unable to keep track of time or forgetting things?
It's not like that with Taylor.
Drop it with the developmental disorder stuff. It's embarrassing.
William said with a dismissive laugh. Whenever I brought up Taylor's issues, he would just snort and dismiss my concerns.
Just make sure you discipline her right, and that won't happen.
He quickly changed the subject, despite trying to have a proper discussion about it several times, and telling him about Taylor's behavior at preschool. He seemed to get annoyed and started saying he had work even on weekends. It felt like I was the only one parenting, and the loneliness just kept growing.
Mommy, cheer up, here's a flower.
On the way back from preschool, Taylor handed me a flower with a carefree laugh. The flower, firmly held in her little hand, swayed endearingly. "Thank you, Mommy's so happy." Not wanting to show her my troubled face, I hugged Taylor, even while feeling lonely. I never gave up hope. Taylor is still a child, but I decided to see her as an individual, different from myself, and not to box her into any categories. Everyone is different, with their own personalities and sensibilities. I resolved that Taylor was just a bit different from other kids. Maybe this unique sensibility is just for now, and she'll be more like others as she grows. She's only 5 after all. Things will keep changing for the better, I reassured myself in silence. Then one day, I was called in by the preschool teacher. I wonder if there was trouble with friends again. Oh well, I drove to the preschool. By now, such calls had become routine, for better or worse, and I had gotten used to them. Familiarity can be scary. I found myself excited about what I might hear this time. When I got to the school staff room, the teacher came and took me to the meeting room. As we sat down, the teacher said,
"Please consider having Taylor take an IQ test."
I was so surprised that I was speechless. This was an unexpected turn of events, and I couldn't quite grasp it. Does this mean Taylor isn't bright enough for that?
Not that way.
The teacher began. As I listened further, it turned out quite the opposite. She might be exceptionally intelligent. The teacher pulled out a drawing Taylor had made. It depicted pansies and marigolds from the garden, drawn with precise detail. Each petal and leaf vein was meticulously illustrated, with proper shading included. Despite being a black and white drawing, it was so realistic that it felt like the flowers were right there. It was not the level of a typical 5-year-old. Her memory seemed to be exceptional too. She could recall what her friends had said days ago with precision. This had caused some trouble several times. I remember now. There were instances where she made her friends cry over disputes about what was said. Furthermore, when the teachers read Taylor a new picture book, she could remember the title, author, and every word of the content after just one hearing.
I know this one.
When the teacher tried to read it in class, Taylor would start reciting the continuation. Can Taylor really do that? Thinking back at home, she never seemed to draw such detailed pictures or recite books. She was either watching videos on a tablet or looking through the bike magazines and comics that William left scattered around. But the teachers at the preschool, seeing my disbelief, nodded solemnly.
It might be important for Taylor's future, so please do have her take an IQ test.
They strongly recommended it to me. At that moment, I was skeptical to say the least. I looked up facilities where she could take the test and found a support center nearby. I made an appointment, but looking at Taylor playing in the living room, she seemed just like any other child. But now that I think about it, something struck me. It was when Taylor was playing house at home. She had set up her dolls and stuffed animals around a little table. The conversation involved which motorcycle routes were recommended, or how scenic the South Bay was.
Next time, let's go there, all four of us. Teddy Bear will be in the back.
Taylor was arranging the order they would travel, saying the girls, herself, and the dolls would be in the middle. It must have been something she picked up from one of William's discarded magazines. But the conversation was eerily realistic, unlike a typical 5-year-old. There were no conversations about who was mommy or daddy, or what was for dinner. Another time, Taylor had used my laptop. I opened it to look something up, and while I stepped away for a moment, she started using it. "What are you doing?"
Mom, I want to play chess. Is that okay?
Peering at the screen, I saw a chess game displayed. It wasn't a children's chess program, but just the regular one installed on the computer. She was playing against the computer, and she had already moved several pieces. I wondered where she had learned to play. Can a 5-year-old really play chess? I was skeptical. You can play for a bit. I thought she would lose quickly, but she beat the computer in no time.
Weak.
The single word she uttered while staring sharply at the screen gave me chills. Maybe it was a fluke just this once. However, as I let her play more, she continued to beat the computer. For a 5-year-old girl, her hobbies might seem unusual. Could you be on your second life? Taylor, on the day of the IQ test, I asked her while driving to the support center.
What's that?
Taylor, sitting in her car seat, looked at me puzzled. She's just a 5-year-old after all, maybe just a bit smarter than her peers. I didn't want to put too much pressure on her by setting high expectations. It's nothing. You're adorable, Taylor. I wasn't too concerned about the test results. As long as Taylor could thrive with her unique abilities and sensibilities, that was enough. The test was just a first step in understanding her. Later, when I went to hear the results, I learned that she had an IQ of 130, classified as a genius. What? I was so surprised I nearly jumped out of my chair. The average IQ for children is around 100, but Taylor had far exceeded that, scoring a very high score. Looking at her innocent smiling face, I wondered what she was thinking.
IQ? That's weird.
Taylor laughed gleefully. If she is a genius with an IQ of 130, it explains her ability to recite books and draw detailed drawings. At that moment, I decided to have her take the private elementary school entrance exams, thinking it would be beneficial for her future. When I shared the results with her preschool teachers, they were surprised as well. Upon mentioning the private elementary school exams, they were supportive and happy for her. That day, I left with a stack of private elementary school brochures. From then on, we began days filled with studying. I found a promising tutoring, and I intended to let her prepare for the exam. We had a lot to prepare, not only for the paper tests, but for many other aspects as well. Despite it all, Taylor seemed to be enjoying herself, diligently following her tutor's enthusiastic instructions and completing her studies at home.
Mom, what's next?
She didn't seem to mind learning new things or applying what she had learned.
More.
Once Taylor learned something, she was eager for the next. Like a dry sponge soaking up water, she absorbed everything. She was not only good at drawing and using scissors and glue, but also fairly good at sports. Her weakness was cooperating with friends and reading the room, which she struggled with. Try to listen to the teacher's instructions.
That's boring.
The teacher is planning what to do next with everyone. Your friends are adjusting to that too. You know you can't play musical chairs if you don't understand it's happening, right?
Why do we even play that game?
Well, one reason is to learn how to play by the rules.
Oh, really?
She seemed satisfied with that explanation, and her face brightened. Once I explained it in an orderly manner, it seemed to click, and she surprisingly and smoothly accepted it, and gradually, Taylor began to fit in better with her friends. The number of conflicts decreased significantly, which was a relief. On the other hand, William's attitude was cold. He still worked on holidays and was rarely home, so he seldom saw Taylor. As he passed by Taylor studying in the living room, he would scoff.
Developmental disabilities, but smart, huh?
He said mockingly, and was about to leave. I felt irritated at his back. William, don't say that. He hardly tries to understand Taylor, and yet he says such things.
Keep it down, will you? I'm tired from work,
he said annoyingly, covering his ears with his hands. I mean, he chooses to work, yet complains like that. I wanted to retort, but I didn't want to argue in front of Taylor. She has a good memory. It would be inappropriate to expose her to such a petty marital dispute. The sound of the living room door closing was hollow. Does William really think only about work? This happened several times, and each time, I angrily told him to stop. Sorry, Taylor. Don't mind what Dad says. To my surprise, Taylor was unfazed.
It's okay, Mom. Besides, everything Dad says is a lie,
she said with a laugh, but it wasn't a cheerful one. It seemed more like a mischievous grin. What does she mean by all lies? At that moment, I felt uneasy about Taylor's words, but I wouldn't understand their full meaning until much later. Several months passed. The elementary school exams were over, and all that was left was to wait for the day of the results announcement. The exams seemed to have been harder than expected, and Taylor seemed a bit unsure of herself. She must have been really tired, as she spent a lot of time just watching videos aimlessly. But within a week, she began drawing meticulous pictures on large sheets of paper. She seemed to enjoy drawing, both during and after the exams, and the number of her drawings increased rapidly day by day. Then came the day of the exam results. Nervously, I checked the results website.
Mom, how is it? Is it there? Not there?
Just wait a second.
Hurry, hurry.
Listening to Taylor's urging, I faced the screen. Then, as I scrolled down, I found Taylor's exam number and name. She passed. Congratulations, Taylor. You passed. You passed.
Passed? Yes, yes, yes.
We both jumped around in joy. The fact that she felt the exam was difficult only made this moment more thrilling. I need to celebrate Taylor's hard work. I quickly messaged William via messaging app about the results. I'm sure he'll be thrilled. Maybe he'll leave work and come rushing home. I harbored a faint hope, but that hope was spectacularly dashed.
I'll be late because of work, and then I'm off on a business trip.
That was all his message said. No congratulations. No well done. Just a business-like communication. In that moment, I felt something snap inside me. Then I decided to put a certain plan into action. Though I was far from calm, I couldn't show it in front of Taylor. I carried the unresolved feelings, biding my time. 3 days after Taylor's results, William came home in high spirits. He entered the living room humming a tune, smiling as if his previous demeanor was just an act. He handed me a souvenir he had been carrying, and while stroking Taylor's head, said,
Congratulations on passing. You did it.
Dad did mess up, too, huh?
Without hesitation, Taylor pulled out several photos and scattered them in front of William. The photos showed William and a young woman looking cozy together on a trip. It was a picture of William looking at the woman with a smile he had never shown me.
What? This? Why?
His face was lined with question marks, showing his confusion. He looked at me, pleading with his eyes, wondering how his behaviors had been discovered. But I just stared back at him coldly. I controlled the boiling rage inside and explained without raising my voice. Actually, Taylor has a photographic memory, able to remember everything she sees instantly. The preschool teacher had mentioned her exceptional memory, but it was due to this ability. During Taylor's exam preparation, William was sitting on the sofa nearby the dining table behind him, gazing text message on his phone. From her angle at the table, Taylor had seen the content of his text messages. That's why I learned about it from Taylor. She remembered the details of where and when the trip was supposed to be, and told me the next morning.
Hey, Dad's going on a trip.
What? He was supposed to inform me whenever he left the house on a business trip, and yet he hadn't said a word. That moment I suspected something was wrong. After realizing this, I asked Taylor for more details.
Everything Dad says is a lie.
I didn't understand what she meant at the time, but she knew William was pretending to be at work while actually planning a trip with another woman.
No way. This isn't some kind of comic.
I've had my suspicions about you for some time.
Huh?
William looked stunned. I had been subtly informed about his infidelity by his parents. His father, James, has already retired from the company. However, during the conversation about old acquaintances, it seems he also heard about William. At first, I didn't want to believe it, but when I heard about it from Taylor, I contacted James right away.
Why?
He told me to let him know if there was ever an issue with you. I tried to get the schedule from Taylor, though she couldn't read long words like place names or hotel names yet. What if she could memorize the screen and then draw it on paper?
You mean you had her draw the screen from memory?
Exactly. Yes, among the vast sheets of paper that Taylor had drawn, it was there. She had depicted William's smartphone screen across several sheets. I pulled these drawings out, just as a preschool teacher once showed me. I displayed them in front of William. The details were precise, from the conversation content to the battery level and the time messages were sent. Even Da Vinci would be amazed at this. The moment William saw the drawing, he turned pale and began to tremble. I had taken photos of these drawings and sent them to James, informing him of William's schedule. Then, secretly visiting the scene, James managed to capture photos of William and his mistress during their trip. With these pieces of evidence before him, William could no longer make any excuses.
No, this can't be happening. This isn't possible.
He stuttered, looking at Taylor standing nearby, disbelief written all over his face. He had never imagined being outsmarted by Taylor, whom he had ridiculed so much. I stepped between Taylor and him to change the subject. As for your partner, she seems to be a beautiful 27-year-old secretary. James seems to know her too.
What, that,
Maybe you could introduce her to me and these two as well. As soon as I finished speaking, the door opened, and his parents came in. They had been hiding in the back room all along. William's face grew even paler, and he started sweating profusely. Maybe I should bring some water for him, huh? Seeing his parents, he glanced at me, then at Taylor, flustered, moving his hands and mouth awkwardly.
William, let me get a proper explanation, shall we?
James was furious, his face terrifying. With tremendous force, After witnessing his biological father's anger, William finally seemed to reflect on his actions.
I'm sorry, Dad.
He was shaking like a leaf, terrified as if facing a fierce predator.
No, it's not like that with the secretary. This was, well,
From looking at Taylor's drawing, you two seem quite close.
Without skipping a beat, James said the messages were filled with hearts, not something you'd expect in normal work communications.
it was just for fun. She asked me to do it, and I couldn't refuse.
So, you were just doing what the secretary told you.
But I thought it was necessary for smooth communication with my subordinates.
What do you mean smooth communication?
It was as if a thunderbolt struck him. Signaled by this, his mother took Taylor back into the room in the back. Then a fierce lecture ensued for William, lasting about 2 hours.
What are you doing as a married man with a family?
James shouted angrily.
You neglect your family, and you cannot be trusted to lead our company.
James declared, removing William from his position as president and disowning him.
From now on, you are forbidden from having any involvement with our family.
But that's too harsh.
You should realize the gravity of what you've done.
James glared at William, silencing him. From that day on, William's attitude towards me and Taylor changed drastically. He started buying flowers and cakes, and he took the initiative to help with household chores, as if he was trying to ingratiate himself with me. However, I had already made a firm decision. I am divorcing you. After Taylor had gone to bed, I laid out the divorce papers and handed William a pen. Please sign this. William became visibly nervous, sweating as he tried to persuade me.
I was wrong. Please. Anything but divorce. I'll find a job and work hard.
I cannot agree to that. I pushed the pen back to him, urging him to sign. After hesitating, William took the pen from my hand and signed. I will also be seeking alimony and child support. Make sure you find a proper job, I stated coldly, and William slumped in defeat. Later, I heard from James that William was no longer the president and had become unemployed. He was starting to look for new employment. The beautiful secretary he had been involved with declared their breakup as soon as William resigned, seemingly losing interest without his executive title. Having lost his job, family, and the secretary, he moved into a rundown apartment. Originally, the house we lived in was owned by his parents. Thus, William was forced to pack his belongings and leave. Thinking I no longer had to hear his mocking words felt refreshingly clear. The divorce papers were processed at the district court, severing all ties with William. However, I still maintained contact with his parents. After William left, James came to visit.
I am terribly sorry for the disgraceful behavior of my son.
He apologized, bringing expensive gifts. It's okay. Please don't worry about it.
Out of penance, and for Taylor's sake, feel free to use this house as you like.
Really? Are you sure? I was just considering our next steps. This house was conveniently located near the elementary school Taylor was supposed to attend. It seemed like a blessing in disguise. Moreover, James even said, "You don't need to pay rent," which I felt compelled to decline. After some discussion, Taylor and I decided to rent the house, and we started meeting his parents regularly. Taylor appeared to grow fond of James, always staying close to him. When she gave him a portrait for his birthday, James was so happy he cried. Taylor is now an elementary school student, attending daily with great energy. I was initially worried about how she would fit in, but when school started, Taylor seemed to feel comfortable and thrived, freely enjoying her days. Even between classes, she draws in her notebook and shows her friends.
I'm going to be the next Picasso.
Picasso. When you say Picasso, you're referring to one of the greatest artists of the 20th century.
I'm going to art school.
She said seriously, sitting in the living room facing her drawing paper. Her collection had grown to hundreds of sheets. Thinking about art school seems quite ambitious for an elementary student. However, she might actually end up skipping grades and becoming an art student.
I'll support you.
When I discussed this with James, I received a positive response. During her preschool years, she struggled to fit in and had several troubles. Back then it was tough, but in hindsight, Taylor was simply a naturally gifted girl. Once we realized this, she not only conquered her elementary school entrance exams, but also set her sights on attending art school. This is a significant change. Believing in her abilities and talents was not a mistake. A not-so-little individual is about to take a significant step forward. Although my contribution is small, I want to continue supporting Taylor's promising future.